Deep in Montana's unforgiving wilderness, where majestic mountains meet endless fields of grain, something unprecedented is about to unfold. The Los Sangre Negra, Mexico's most feared cartel, has made their biggest mistake. They targeted a remote farm in Silver Creek Valley, believing its elderly owner to be an easy mark, but beneath John Harrison's weathered hands and farmer's demeanor lies a secret that's about to turn their world upside down. Before he was a farmer, he was Phantom, the most lethal Delta Force commander in U.S. military history. His missions were so classified even the CIA denied their existence. His tactical genius was so renowned that terrorists would surrender at the mere whisper of his presence. And now, for the first time, the full story of what happened when the deadliest cartel met their match can finally be told. Quick pause before we continue. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The morning frost crunched under John Harrison's boots as he walked his property line. Dawn was breaking over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. His German shepherd Atlas trotted beside him, alert and watchful as always. At 68, John still moved with the fluid grace of a much younger man, his eyes constantly scanning his surroundings. Old habits that had kept him alive through 3 decades of combat. Something's not right, boy, John muttered, kneeling to examine fresh tire tracks in the mud. Atlas growled softly in agreement. The tracks were deep, made by heavy vehicles, and they weren't from any local trucks. He recognized Sarah Bennett, his closest neighbor, pulled up in her weathered pickup. John, thank God you're out here. Did you hear about the Thompsons? John Sten, brushing dirt from his jeans. What about them? They're gone. Just packed up and left last night. No warning, nothing, but this morning I saw men at their place, big black SUVs, guys who don't look like they're from around here. Cartel. John's voice was calm, but his mind was already racing through scenarios, analyzing threats, forming plans. Sarah nodded, her hands gripping her steering wheel tightly. That's what they're saying in town. They've been moving up from the south, buying up properties. Those who don't sell well, they find other ways to persuade them. John's jaw tightened. Have they approached you yet? No, but Miller's place went last week. Same thing, mysterious buyers. Too much money to refuse. Those who stick around say they're using the farms for distribution routes. Makes sense, John said, his tactical mind already mapping it out. Isolated properties, legitimate cover for vehicle traffic, storage facilities already in place. Sarah leaned out her window, lowering her voice. John, these aren't ordinary criminals. They're organized, well-funded. The sheriff's out of his depth, and nobody else will stand up to them. John patted the side of her truck. Don't worry about me, Sarah. I've dealt with worse. Just be careful. They're targeting this valley system. Automatically won't be long before they come knocking on your door. As Sarah drove away, Johan whistled for Atlas and headed toward his barn. Inside, beneath the ordinary tools and farm equipment, lay a hidden cellar he'd installed when he first bought the property. Old paranoia, his friends had called it. John called it preparation. He lifted the false floorboard, revealing a cache of equipment he'd hoped never to use again. Military-grade communications gear, weapons, tactical gear, everything he'd need if things went south. He'd spend his entire career planning for worst-case scenarios. This wouldn't be any different. John's phone buzzed, a text from an old contact in law enforcement. Cartels moving hard and fast. 7 properties taken in the last month. Watch your back. He pocketed the phone and moved to his office, pulling out detailed maps of the valley. His property sat at a crucial junction, controlling the main road and overlooking 3 different approach routes. No wonder they wanted it. The sound of vehicles on the main road caught his attention. Through his window, he watched 3 black SUVs roll past his gate, moving slowly, too slowly. Reconnaissance marking the next target. Atlas, John said, scratching his dog's ears. But they don't know who they're dealing with. He spent the rest of the morning making calls to old teammates, men who fought beside him in places that didn't officially exist, carrying out missions that would never see the light of day. It's Phantom. Remember that favor you owe me. Time to pay up, John. Been a long time. How bad is it? Cartels moving into the valley, taking farms, setting up distribution networks. They'll be here soon. A low whistle from the other end. Need some Backup might not hurt to have the old team together again. One last mission, you know we're not as young as we used to be. John smiled grimly. Neither are they. Call the others, we've got work to do by afternoon. His plans were in motion. 4 of his old team members were on route: Knox, their sniper; Cyrus, demo expert; Zane, communication specialist; Nash, their medic. Together, they'd face down warlords, terrorists, and armies. A cartel wouldn't know what hit them. John walked his property again as the sun began to set, this time with different eyes, not as a farmer, but as a battlefield commander. Every hill, every tree line, every approach, they could all be used. The cartel thought they were targeting an old man's farm. Instead, they were walking into a kill zone designed by one of the most experienced special operations commanders in history. Atlas barked, suddenly alerting John to more vehicles approaching, the same SUVs from earlier, this time stopping at his gate. John straightened his back, adjusted his worn baseball cap, and prepared to play the role of a simple farmer. Let them think he was harmless. Let them underestimate him. It was a mistake they would only make once. 5 men emerged from the SUVs, their expensive suits out of place against the rugged Montana landscape. John counted 2 more staying with the vehicles, hands concealed beneath jackets. Atlas growled softly beside him, but a gentle touch from John kept him quiet. Miguel Ramirez led the group, his polished boots crunching on gravel as he approached. His smile was practiced, professional, but his eyes were cold as winter steel. Mr. Harrison, beautiful property you have here. Ramirez extended his hand. John took it, noting the man's grip too firm, trying to establish dominance. And amateur's tactic. What can I do for you, gentlemen? John's voice was friendly, measured, playing the role of a simple farmer while his mind cataloged every detail. 2 men moving toward his barn, trying to be subtle about it. One by the gate with a radio, military training, but sloppy. They'd grown too comfortable. We represent an investment group, Ramirez said, gesturing to the valley. We've been acquiring properties in the area, expanding operations. You might say your land. It has certain features that interest us. Johan leaned against his fence post, the picture of relaxation inside. He was marking fields of fire, cataloging weapons, noting their stances. Ex-military, at least 3 of them. The others were muscle used to intimidating civilians. Not interested in selling, John said simply. L's been in my family too long. Ramirez's smile tightened. Perhaps I wasn't clear. We're prepared to offer significantly above market value. 3 million cash, more than generous for a ranch this size. John scratched Atlas behind the ears, buying time to observe the 2 men by his barn. They were checking sightlines, defensive positions, not real estate investors. Advanced team mapping the property for an assault. Money's not everything, John replied. Some things aren't for sale. A friendly facade cracked slightly. Ramirez stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mr. Harrison, let me be direct. This valley is changing. Progress, you might say. You can be part of that change and profit from it, or John's voice remained calm, even as he noted the subtle shift in the men's positions surrounding him. Standard intimidation formation. Or you might find this valley becoming very unwelcoming. Accidents happen, especially to stubborn old men who don't know when to take a good deal. John straightened slowly, allowing just a hint of steel to enter his voice. Sounds like a threat, Mr. Ramirez. Ramirez's eyes widened slightly at the use of his name, a name John shouldn't have known. A calculated slip to let them know he wasn't as ignorant as he appeared, simply stating facts. Ramirez recovered quickly. The valley is changing. Fighting it would be unwise. One of the men by the barn called out in Spanish, something about security camera. JN had let them spot the obvious ones, hiding his real surveillance system much more carefully. Think about it, Ramirez said, producing a business card. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer becomes significantly less generous. John took the card, noting the fake company name, Standard Cartel Front. I'll sleep on it. See that you do. Ramirez turned to leave, then paused. Beautiful dog, German shepherd. Yes, would be a shame if something happened to him. Atlas growled, picking up on John's tension. John kept his hand gentle on the dog's head, but his voice carried the weight of 3 decades of combat experience. That would be a very serious mistake. Something in his tone made Ramirez hesitate. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. For just a moment the mask slipped and John saw. Genuine surprise. They had expected an easy mark, a simple farm they could bully or buy. Instead, they'd caught a glimpse of something else, something that set off warning bells. After the cartel members left, Sheriff Michael Roberts' patrol car pulled up. Lights off. The sheriff stepped. This morning their barn burned down. Fire departments calling it an accident, but how many families have they threatened? John asked, setting his cup down carefully. 5 so far. 2 have already agreed to their terms. Can't blame them. They got kids to think about. Roberts leaned forward. John, these aren't ordinary criminals. They've got connections, military-grade weapons. The FBI is involved, but they're moving slow. Too slow. You're telling me to play ball. I'm telling you to be careful. Roberts corrected. Nobody knows what you use to do the things you've seen, but I do, and I'm telling you these people won't hesitate to hurt anyone who stands in their way. John moved to his window, watching the sunset over his land. Found anything solid on them yet? That's the thing. Roberts sighed. Every time we get close to evidence, it disappears. Witnesses change their stories. Even got a call from the state attorney's office suggesting we focus on other priorities. They're well connected, more than well connected. They've got someone in the system high up. Roberts stood, adjusting his gun belt. Just watch yourself, John. And if you need anything, I know who to call. John finished. After Roberts left, John went to his barn, entering a code into a hidden panel. A section of walls slid aside, revealing the sophisticated communication center. He activated the encrypted system, sending a single message. Time to wake the ghosts. Within minutes, responses began coming in. His old team was ready. The cartel thought they were dealing with a stubborn old farmer. They were about to learn why some retired soldiers are best left alone. Atlas patted over, resting his head on John's knee. Getting too old for this, boy, John muttered, scratching the dog's ears. But they both knew that wasn't true. Some men are built for peace, others for war. John Harrison had tried peace for 15 years now. It was time for war. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The sound of engines echoing through the valley caught John's attention. Through his security feeds, he watched 4 vehicles approaching from different directions, his team using old tactics to avoid being tracked. Knox's black pickup came first, followed by Cyrus in a weathered Jeep sedan, and Nash arrived minutes later, their vehicles covered in dust from back road driving. John met them in the barn, away from prying eyes. 20 years melt away as his old team assembled, their movements still synchronized. After all this time, Knox carried his custom rifle case like it was part of him. Cyrus brought enough explosives to level a small town, all carefully concealed in construction equipment cases. Zane's communication gear looked civilian but could crack military-grade encryption. Nash's medical kit was upgraded but familiar. He patched them up through worse situations than this, just like old times. KNX said, his voice gruff but warm, though usually we had a government backing us up. Government would just slow us down, Cyrus replied, already examining the barn structure. Nice setup, John. Good sight lines, multiple escape routes. You weren't kidding about being ready. John spread a detailed map across his workbench. Cartel's been systematic, taking key properties, establishing distribution routes. They're not just running drugs, setting up a permanent operation. Zane connected his laptop, bringing up intercepted communications. They're professional ex-military, in their ranks mostly Mexican special forces, but they're arrogant, sloppy with their security. Their mistake, Nash observed, organizing his medical supplies. How many are we dealing with? Main force is 30 men. John pointed to marked locations. 2 separate groups. First teams, the muscle, they handle intimidation, arson, accidents. Second teams, they're professionals, actual combat experience, proper tactical training. Knox examined the terrain through the barn door. Kill zones are perfect, natural bottleneck here. High ground advantage, we can funnel them right where we want them. They'll come in force. John warned, no more pretense of being businessmen. They've got heavy weapons, armor, probably air support. Good. Cyrus grinned, pulling out his demolition plans. Been a while since we had a proper fight. This isn't just about holding them off. Junk's voice turned serious. We end this permanently, not just here. We shut down their entire operation in the valley. The team sobered, recognizing the tone. It was the voice that had led them through impossible missions, that had brought them all home alive when the odds said otherwise. "Why you really come?" John asked, looking at each man. "You could have stayed retired, stayed safe." Nash spoke first, his medical bag open beside him. "Remember Kosovo, that village we found after the militia went through some things? You can't walk away from some fights. Neat fighting cartel took my cousin's farm in Texas." Cyrus added, checking detonator wires. "By the time anyone could do anything, it was too late." "Not happening again. Not here." KNX just shrugged, but his eyes were hard. "You called that's enough." Zane looked up from his computer. "They're moving faster than we thought. Intercepted orders. Main force mobilizing for tonight. No warning, no negotiation. They're coming to take the farm and send a message." "Perfect." John smiled grimly. "Let's give them a message of their own." They spent the next hour fortifying key positions. Cyrus rigged the main road with explosives that could flip an armored vehicle. KNX set up 3 different sniper nests, each covering a different approach. Zane established a command center in John's basement, linking their communications and surveillance. "Remember Kandahar?" KNX asked, as they worked that night raid that went sideways when the whole city lit up. Cyrus chuckled. "Never saw so much firepower in my life until Wade called an audible." Nash added, "Turned their own defenses against them." "Still don't know how you knew that would work." "Simple." John said, checking ammunition stores. "People get predictable when they think they have the advantage. Cartels the same way. They're used to civilians, used to easy victories. They won't be ready for what's coming." Zane's voice crackled over their earpieces. "Movement at the Thompson place. They're assembling their force. Thermal imaging shows at least 20 vehicles. They're not subtle anymore." Cyrus observed, finishing his last explosive trap. "Good," John replied. "Means they're scared. Scared men make mistakes." The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the valley. John stood with his team on the porch, watching the day fade. They were no longer young men, but age had brought something else. Experience, patience, the kind of wisdom that only comes from decades of combat. "Knox, I want you in the North Tower, best sightlines, and they won't expect anyone up there." Cyrus rigged the barn for remote detonation. "Make it look like a tempting target." "Zone, keep monitoring their CS. The moment they split their forces, we take advantage." Nash medical station in the basement, but be ready to move. This gets hot. "We'll need you mobile." Each man nodded, understanding their roles without need for further explanation. This wasn't their first impossible mission, just maybe their last. "One more thing," John added, his voice carrying the weight of command. "We're not just defending a farm, we're defending every family in this valley, every person these bastards would victimize. We do this right, we do it clean, and we do it permanent." As his team moved to their positions, John checked his weapons one final time. Atlas sat beside him, alert and ready. In the distance he could see dust clouds rising. The cartel's forces assembling. They thought they were preparing to raid an old man's farm. Instead, they were walking into a trap laid by some of the most experienced combat veterans alive. "Live." The radio crackled. Zane's voice was tight. "First wave moving out. ETA 20 minutes. Copy that," John replied, signaling to his team. "Remember, let them get comfortable. Let them think they have the advantage. Then we show them what real soldiers can do." Moonlight silvered the Montana landscape as John watched the cartel convoy approach. Through his night vision scope, 20 vehicles moving in formation. Someone had trained them well. Too bad they'd forgotten the first rule of combat: never fight on ground your enemy is prepared. They're splitting up. Zane's voice crackled through the C3 teams. Main force coming up the central road. 2 flanking units trying to circle wide. Got eyes on the lead vehicle. Knox's voice was cold and professional from his sniper's nest. Officer types in the back seat want me to take the shot. Negative, John replied. Let them get comfortable. Spring the trap on my mark. The convoy's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the road to John's farm. They moved with confidence, no attempt at stealth. Why bother? They thought they were hunting an old man. Contact in 2 minutes, Cyrus reported. Charges are set. These boys are in for a surprise. Johan watched through his scope. As the first vehicles reached his outer perimeter, the cartel soldiers emerged with military precision weapon ready. Moving in practiced formations, Miguel Ramirez stepped out of an armored SUV. Directing his men with hand signals spread out, Ramirez ordered in Spanish, "I want this place surrounded. No one gets out alive. They're deploying heavy weapons." Zane warned 50 cows on the truck's RPGs in the second wave. John's voice remained calm. "Stick to the plan. Let them commit." The cartel forces advanced steadily, moving past the first line of John's defenses without noticing them. 50 meters, 40, 30. They were almost in position, sir, one of Ramirez's men called out. "No movement in the house." Thermals showing nothing. Ramirez grabbed his radio. "Check the barn. He has to be here somewhere." 3 cell soldiers approached the barn, weapons ready. John watched them through his scope, counting down in his head. This was the moment that would set the tone. "Now, John," commanded. Cyrus detonated his first series of charges. The ground erupted beneath the lead vehicles, sending them airborne in a shower of dirt and metal. Before the dust settled, Knox opened fire from his hidden position. 2 cartel soldiers dropped before they realized they were under attack. "What the hell?" Ramirez shouted, diving for cover. "Where's the fire coming from?" The TN exploded into chaos. Jonk team had prepared kill zones throughout the property, and now they put them to use every time the cartel forces tried to. They found themselves caught in interlocking fields of fire. 3 trying to flank east. Knox reported calmly, his rifle cracking in the darkness got them. Cyrus responded, a series of explosions driving the flanking team right into Nash's line of fire. John moved like a ghost through the darkness, years of combat experience guiding every step. He caught 2 cartel soldiers by surprise, disarming one and using him as a shield against the other's fire. Both went down without a sound. "Who are these guys?" a cartel soldier screamed over their radio. "This isn't right. They're too organized." Ramirez's voice cut through the chaos. "They're professionals. Fall back to the vehicles. Reform defensive positions." "Too late," John whispered, triggering another set of charges. The explosions cut off their retreat, trapping the cartel forces in the kill zone. Knox's rifle spoke again, technical. "At your 3 o'clock, John. Gunner down, but driver still up." John rolled behind a tractor as 50 caliber rounds tore through the air where he'd been standing. The technical's driver was good, keeping the vehicle moving to avoid return fire, but he'd forgotten to watch his flanks. Cyrus. John called time to use that toy. He brought a rocket streak through the darkness, striking the technical's engine block. The vehicle flipped, cartwheeling off the road in a ball of flame. "Dan, I missed that." Cyrus laughed, "just like Damascus. Stay focused." Gijan ordered their regrouping. Ramirez had managed to rally his remaining men behind the wreckage of their vehicles. They had training Jan gave them that even caught by surprise. They were adapting quickly. "Zay, what's their strength?" John asked, moving to a new position. 18 still combat effective. They're calling for reinforcements. Second wave is 30 minutes out. They won't last that long, KNX stated flatly, his rifle ending another cartel soldier's attempt to flank their position. Jan watched Ramirez directing his men, noting their movements. They were trying to establish a base of fire, create space for their reinforcements to arrive. Standard military doctrine time to show them why standard responses get you killed. Cyrus hit their rally point. "Knox, wash for runners. Nash, be ready. Some of them are about to need medical attention." Multiple explosions ripped through the cartel's position. John moved through the chaos like a wraith, his suppressed rifle ending threats before they could materialize. 2 decades of fighting had taught him the value of economy of motion. No wasted movements, no hesitation. "Contact front." A cartel soldier screamed, "He's inside our perimeter." John's reply was swift and silent. 3 more went down before they could turn to face him. "Who are you?" Ramirez screamed into the darkness. "What kind of farmer fights like this? The kind you shouldn't have threatened." John replied, his voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. The cartel's first assault was falling apart. What had started as a confident attack had turned into a desperate struggle for survival. Of the original 20 vehicles, 8 were burning. Of the 40 men Ramirez had brought, less than half were still fighting. "Pull back." Ramirez ordered full retreat. "Get back to the rally point. I "Don't think so," John said calmly. Knox's sniper rifle cracked 3 times. The remaining vehicle's tires exploded, stranding them in the kill zone. "El Fantasma is going to kill us all," Ramirez muttered, realizing the trap they were in. "El Fantasma should have done his homework," John replied, stepping out of the shadows behind Ramirez. "Should have asked why no one had ever successfully attacked this farm." Ramirez spun, raising his weapon. But he was too slow. John's strike was precise, efficient. The cartel leader dropped unconscious as his remaining men surrendered. "Area secure," Knox reported. "No runners, Nash. We got wounded." "Zan, what's the status on their reinforcements?" "Still inbound, 20 minutes out. Bigger force this time. Looks like they're bringing everything they have." John nodded, zip tying Ramirez's unconscious form. "Good, let them come." First wave was just to remind us of what we can do. Next wave is where we show them who we really are. The aftermath of the first battle left John's farm eerily quiet. Burning vehicles cast orange glows across the Montana night, while zip-tied cartel soldiers sat under Nash's watchful eye. Ramirez was starting to stir his face, showing the dawning realization of just how badly they'd miscalculated. 16 prisoners, Nash reported, finishing another field dressing. 3 critical but stable. Rest are walking wounded. John knelt beside Ramirez, who glared up at him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Now then," John said quietly, "Leighton, talk about El Fantasma. Go to hell." Ramirez spat, then switched to Spanish, cursing. "Your choice." John replied in perfect Spanish, shocking Ramirez into silence. "But your reinforcements are coming into my kill zone in less than 15 minutes. Would be a shame if they made the same mistakes you did." Zane approached, laptop in hand. "Intercept their communications. El Fantasma is coming personally. He's pissed, bringing in heavy weapons. Professional contractors. This isn't going to be like the first wave." Ramirez laughed a harsh sound. "You're all dead. El Fantasma doesn't leave witnesses. He'll burn this whole valley to get to you." "How many?" Jane asked calmly. "Enough to kill you 10 times over." Ramirez sneered. "Former Mexican Special Forces, Colombian mercenaries, cartels, best killers. They'll..." John cut him off. "I meant, how many families have you terrorized? How many farms have you taken? How many accidents have you arranged?" The question caught Ramirez off guard for just a moment. His arrogance cracked, showing uncertainty beneath. "Knox," John called. "What do you see?" The sniper voice crackled over their cowls. "Multiple vehicles, different approach vectors. They're being smart this time. Thermal shows at least 40 troops, maybe more. Multiple heavy weapons teams. They're spreading out." Cyrus added. "Won't fall for the same trap twice." John turned back to Ramirez. "Last chance. Help us end this with minimal bloodshed, or watch more of your men die needlessly." "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Ramirez said, his voice dropping. "El Fantasma is different. He enjoys the violence, the killing. You should run while you can." "Already met men like him," John replied, "standing in places much worse than this. They're all the same in the end." Zane's voice cut through the night. "First elements reaching the outer perimeter. They're moving slower, checking for traps." John moved to his team, their faces illuminated by burning wreckage. "They'll come from multiple directions this time, looking to overwhelm us with numbers and firepower." "Knox, I want you mobile. Change positions after every few shots." "Cyrus, time for the second AR charges." "Zane, keep their comms scrambled." Nash, the medic, nodded toward the prisoners. "Keep them secure, keep them alive. Remember," John added, "they're expecting us to be tired, maybe wounded. They think the first fight cost us. Let them think that. Let them get overconfident." A new voice cut through their radio frequencies, deep, commanding, speaking Spanish with a Calo accent. El Fantasma himself directing his forces found their command channel. Zane reported. "Want me to jam it?" "No." John smiled grimly. "Let them talk. Fear works better when they can share it." The team split up, moving to predetermined positions. Years of working together meant they barely needed words. Each man knew his role, trusted the others to play theirs. Through his night vision, John watched the cartel's second wave advancing. Their movement was more professional, now leapfrogging between cover, maintaining proper intervals. El Fantasma had indeed brought his best contact in 2 minutes. Knox reported. "Got eyes on their command element. El Fantasmas in the black Suburban 3 vehicles, back heavily guarded." Cyrus, John directed, "Give them Something to think about: a series of explosions ripped through the night, not aimed at the cartel forces, but illuminating the battlefield. In the sudden light, they could see what they were walking into. Defensive positions covering every approach, kill zones arranged with mathematical precision. Mother of God, one of the cartel soldiers whispered over their open channel. The whole property's fortified. Keep advancing. El Fantasma voice commanded. They're just trying to scare us. Press the attack. John's voice cut into their frequency, speaking calm. Spanish. 43 minutes ago, I had twice your number in body bags or zip ties. That was when I was being gentle. Last warning: withdraw or meet the same fate. The cartel forces hesitated their advance, faltering. El Fantasma response was immediate and brutal. He shot one of his own men who had stopped moving. The next one who shows cowardice dies by my hand. He roared forward. Kill them all. Well, John sighed, switching back to his team's channel. Can't say we didn't try. Cyrus got something special for them. The demo expert replied, remember that trick we used in Fuera? Do it. The night erupted, and carefully orchestrated chaos explosions chain reacted across the battlefield. But these weren't meant to kill. They were precise, tactical, cutting off escape routes, separating units from each other, creating confusion and panic. They spread too thin. KNX reported, his right cracking, methodically taking targets of opportunity. John moved through the darkness like a ghost, his movements calculated and precise. Two cartel soldiers never saw him coming. One moment they were advancing, the next they were unconscious. Who are you people? El Fantasma voice roared over the radio. John's response was cold and precise. You wanted this farm so badly. Welcome to it. Let me show you why. They used to call me Phantom. The battle was about to enter its true phase. The cartel had brought their best, their most hardened killers, but they were about to learn the difference between killers and soldiers, between thugs with guns and men who had spent decades perfecting the art of warfare. In the distance, El Fantasma was shouting orders, trying to regain control of a battlefield that was rapidly dissolving into chaos. But John had fought in place where chaos was a weapon, where darkness was an ally, and where fear could be turned against those who wielded it. El Fantasma assault hit like a thunderstorm. Automatic weapons fire lit up the night, heavy caliber rounds tearing through John's outer defenses. His forces moved with professional precision, using suppressing fire to cover their advance. This wasn't the sloppy attack of the first wave. This was a coordinated military operation. Multiple teams. 9 o'clock. Knox reported, his rifle responding with measured shots. They're using proper fire and maneuver. These aren't cartel thugs. John watched through his thermal scope as El Fantasma men established support positions. Former Mexican special forces, he confirmed. See how they move. They've done this before. A rocket strike through the darkness, exploding against John's barn. The structure held, reinforced exactly for this scenario, but the message was clear. The cartel wasn't planning anymore. They're probing our defenses, Cyrus called out, looking for weak points. Want me to discourage them? Not yet, John replied. Let them commit more forces. El Fantasma voice boomed across the battlefield. You cannot hide forever. We will burn everything you have. John's response was a precisely placed shot that shattered the cartel boss's spotlight. Darkness reclaimed the battlefield, darkness that John's team had prepared for, had trained in for decades. 3-man team trying to flank east. Knox reported, I see them. Copy that, John responded. Cyrus, give them something to think about. A series of charges detonated, not to kill but to hurt. The flanking team found themselves pushed right into Nash's field of fire. His suppressed MP5 spoke 3 times. 3 bodies hit the ground. They're coordinating better now, Zane warned. Multiple channels, encrypted comms. These guys are professionals. John moved like a shadow through his property. Every step calculated. 2 cartel soldiers were setting up a machine gun nest. Good position, good fields of fire. They never saw him coming. The first went down to a throat strike, the second to a precision takedown. He'd learned in advanced hand-to-hand combat. Command vehicle moving. KNX called out. El Fantasma repositioning. Strong security detail. Let him, John replied. He's looking for a pattern. Let's give him one. The battle shifted into a new phase. El Fantasma men were good. They'd clearly fought in urban combat before, but John's team had written the book on this kind of warfare. Every time the cartel forces thought they'd found an advantage, it turned into a trap. RPG team at your 2 o'clock, Zane shouted. John rolled behind cover as rockets screamed overhead. The explosions were massive professional-grade weapons. These weren't street thugs with black market gear. This was military hardware. Knox priority. Target, take out those RPGs. Bit busy, the sniper grunted. Got 3 teams trying to flank my position. Cyrus on it. More explosions lit up the night. The RPG team disappeared in a controlled blast that sent their weapons flying but left them alive. Precision demolitions, work that only decades of experience could achieve. El Fantasma was getting frustrated. His men were dying or being captured, yet they couldn't seem to get a solid fix on their opponents. Every advance met resistance from unexpected angles. Every tactical advantage evaporated before they could exploit it. Push forward, he commanded. There are only 5 men. We have the numbers. Numbers don't mean much against ghosts. John's voice cut through their command channel. How many men are you willing to lose tonight? A burst of automatic fire answered him. John didn't flinch. He'd already moved from that position, anticipating the response. 2 more cartel soldiers went down to precise shots from his suppressed rifle. West sector's getting heavy, Nash reported. They're making a serious push. That's their feint, John replied. Not watch the east. That's where the real attack's coming. Sure enough, while one team pushed aggressively from the west, their best operators were moving quietly through the eastern approach. It was a solid tactic, one that would have worked against most opponents. Count 12, KNX said quietly. Elite team moving like professionals. These are their best. Good, John replied. Cyrus, Nash, shift east. Knox, hold your fire until my mark. Let's show them what real professionals can do. The elite cartel team moved with impressive skill, using every bit of cover, maintaining perfect spacing. They were halfway to their objective when John sprung his trap. Cyrus's charges illuminated the night, not damaging but disorienting before the cartel operators could adjust their night vision. Knox opened fire from his elevated position. Every shot found its mark, not killing but disabling, taking out knees and shoulders with surgical precision. Clear them up, Jane ordered, and Nash moved in with swift efficiency, securing the wounded operators. El Fantasma's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Who are you people? You really should have done your research, John replied calmly. Asked around about who owned this farm, about why no one had ever successfully attacked it. A new sound cut through them. Night helicopter rotors, boss. They're bringing in air support, Zane warned. Right on schedule. John smiled. Cyrus, oh yeah, got something special for choppers. Just say. When the helicopter swept in low, its spotlight cutting through the darkness, the door gunner opened up with a minigun, stitching a line of destruction across John's property. But the team had prepared for this too. Now, Jane commanded. Cyrus triggered a specialized charge, not an explosion, but a massive flashbang designed specifically for aircraft. The helicopter pilot, momentarily blinded, yanked the stick back. The sudden move threw off the gunner's aim. Knox's rifle cracked once. The spotlight exploded, plunging the helicopter back into darkness. 2 more precise shots disabled the minigun. You can land safely, John broadcast to the pilot, or you can crash. Your choice. The helicopter retreated, its pilot choosing wisdom over valor. On the ground, El Fantasma was shouting orders with increasing desperation. His elite team was down, his air support driven off, and his men were losing cohesion. How many more men are you willing to sacrifice? John asked over their channel. How many bodies before you realize you've made a mistake? The response was immediate, a massive barrage of automatic weapons fire. But John had already moved, ghosting through the darkness to a new position. 20 years ago, they'd call him Phantom because he could appear anywhere, strike without warning, vanish before the enemy could respond. Tonight, he was reminding them why. El Anas's voice cut through the chaos with cold fury. Burn everything, burn it all to the ground. His men deployed incendiary weapons, trying to deny John's team their carefully prepared positions. The night lit up with phosphorus and thermite, turning the battlefield into a hellscape of fire and smoke. They're getting desperate. Knox observed, relocating as flames consumed his previous sniper nest making. Mistakes, careful, John warned. Desperate men are unpredictable. Zane, what are you? Seeing they're splitting into 3 groups, main force still pushing center, but they're deploying their best units. Why trying to flank through the burning zones? A massive explosion rocked the farmhouse. As the cartel deployed satchel charges against the outer walls, the reinforced structure held, but the message was clear. They were done probing and ready to destroy everything. Sir Nash called out, "We've got wounded to evacuate. These fires are getting too close to the holding area." John processed the tactical situation in seconds. Knox cover the east approach. Cyrus, by some time, everyone else fall back to position 3. We're not losing anyone tonight. Cyrus's voice was grim. Got something special say for this. Might want to cover your eyes. Multiple explosions chained across the property, but these were different. Magnesium bright, creating walls of light that temporarily blinded anyone looking in their direction in the confusion. John's team executed a fighting withdrawal, moving their prisoners and wounded to a fortified storm cellar. They'd prepared for exactly this scenario. They're pushing hard on the west side, Knox reported, his rifle cracking steadily. These guys are different. Cartels, elite death squad. I recognize their tactics from the briefings. Lost Fantasmas, John confirmed. Fantasma personal kill team, ex-Mexican special forces who went rogue. They're good, not good enough, Knox replied, punctuating his words with precise shots. The death squad moved with fluid grace, using the fires as cover. They were well-equipped, thermal imaging, advanced body armor, military-grade weapons. These weren't cartel thugs, these were professional killers. Contact, Zane shouted. 3 death squad members had breached the inner perimeter, moving with lethal precision toward the command center. John moved to intercept, but they had him pinned with well-coordinated fire. Little help here, he called out, surprisingly calm despite the bullets cutting through the air around him. Working on it, Cyrus replied. The ground erupted beneath the death squad, not with explosives, but with compressed air and dirt, a non-lethal but disorienting blast that broke their formation. John capitalized, instantly closing the distance. The fight was brief but brutal. The death squad members were excellent shots, but John had spent decades mastering close-quarter combat. The first went down to a throat strike knife disarm combination. The second managed to land a solid hit before John's elbow strike found the sweet spot behind his ear. The third proved tougher. Clearly their hand-to-hand specialist. Impressive, the man said in accented English, squaring up with a fighter stance. But you're still just an old man. John's response was a lightning-fast combination that ended with the specialist unconscious on the ground. Age and trick, kid, we've got a problem. Zane cut in. They're bringing up something big. Thermals showing. Oh hell, they've got a technical with a heavy autocannon. The sound of the 20mm cannon split the night. It is rounds powerful enough to punch through John's reinforced walls. This wasn't about taking the farm anymore. This